It's time to pick some all-star game participants. And a certain team currently has the best record in the National League. Millard Thomas of Locked On Diamondbacks is here to try to figure out which team that could possibly be. This is a Locked On MLB, Locked On Diamondbacks crossover.
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Locked On MLB, Locked On Diamondbacks crossover. This is a weekly crossover where we talk about all of Major League Baseball and see what's happening down in the desert. It's not as bleak as you may have thought it would have been at the beginning of the year. That's not a sentence. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. And right over there is my co-host for the day,
Millard Thomas, host of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, where it's always sunny in Arizona when you're a Locked On Diamondbacks, when you're a Dbacks fan. Follow me on Twitter at CareerThomas24 for my personal account, or look up Locked On Diamondbacks, both Twitter, Instagram for the podcast handle. And of course, please hit subscribe on the Locked On Diamondbacks YouTube channel.
And follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and Instagram. I am your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. All right, we are here with Millard Thomas doing a last run through of the the Sunday games were unbelievable because you got some wild, weird comebacks. First of all, shout out to Keller and the Pirates, who dust themselves off from the Saturday loss. They doubled up the Mets 2-1, and the Pirates are now in first place by themselves because the hottest team in the American League is the Oakland A's. Man. They've won their last 5 games, and it's a wonderful thing. And I'll tell you why it's a wonderful thing, because people have just circled the A's as on their calendar as well. Here's some easy wins. Here's some easy wins. The Pirates thought they had some easy wins. They lost their series. The A's came into Milwaukee and swept the Brewers in Milwaukee. And today was just a weird, sloppy game. Final score was 8-6. There was a Seth Brown. I think he may still be fouling off pitches. He kept fouling and fouling and fouling, and then wound up hitting a 3-run home run, and that was the difference. Some more comebacks. The Reds came back against the Cardinals. The Cardinals are absolutely sputtering. The Cardinals might be sellers at the trade deadline. And one of the most startling comebacks today came between the White Sox and the Marlins. The White Sox took a 5-1 lead into the 8th, and Soler and company came storming back with a 3-run 9th inning. And this is coming off after Friday. They had a 5-run 9th inning. The White Sox should have swept this series. Instead, they dropped 2 out of 3 at home, and the Marlins are holding on to their wildcard spot, and they have crawled to within 4 games in the loss column behind the Braves at this point. Atlanta, who lost today. Who did Atlanta lose to? Who did Atlanta? They lost to Washington, 6-1. There was Kevin Biggio hit a big 3-run home run, and the Blue Jays came from behind to defeat. The Twins scored 4 runs in the first. They were up 4 runs before the Blue Jays even came to bat. The Blue Jays came all the way back from a 6-1 deficit to win 7-6, which means nobody in the American League Central is above 500. But let's get down to brass tacks.
Oh, yeah.
The early morning game, the Diamondbacks just were dead in the water to the Detroit Tigers. And looked like, and at this point I was going to say, okay, I'm doing the show with Millard today. They took 2 out of 3 from Detroit. 4-game winning streak was snapped. Still, they're looking pretty good. And then who got the big? It was Christian Walker, right? Who got the big hit for the Dbacks? It was
Well, you had like a string of guys. Carroll, Walker, and Perdomo all came through in the 9th inning to get.
But Walker was down. They were down to their last strike, and Walker hit one down the line for a 2-run double. And with that, how can we describe the Arizona Diamondbacks?
Oh, in one word, the Answerbacks, because the Dbacks have the most comebacks in Major League Baseball, I believe, this season, and they showed it again. They're the most resilient team in Major League Baseball. It doesn't matter how many times you kick them down; they always find the way to pick themselves back up. And we saw it again on Sunday because they were down to their final 2 outs, and then they just started racking up run after run. Corbin Carroll had himself a series, started Game 1 with 2 home runs, including a grand slam. Had a huge 2-run shot to make it a 1-run game in that 9th inning on Sunday before Christian Walker and Perdomo put the final touches on the lead and the victory. The D-backs are one of the hottest teams in Major League Baseball. They've won 11 of their last 13 games. They are tied for the best record in the National League, and right now it feels damn good to be a D-backs fan.
Well, and they have opened up they're up 4 games in the loss column over Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And folks, just keep in mind, it's now mid-June. Yes, there's a lot of baseball to be played, but it's under 100 games that have to be played. We are eerily close to the midway point of the season. We're just a couple of weeks away from being the halfway mark of the season. And right now, the Diamondbacks they're 15 games above 500. And they have a 3.5 game lead over Los Angeles right now. The Pirates are in first place by themselves. The Rangers are not only first place by themselves, they have a 5-game lead over the Houston Astros.
Oof.
And the Tampa Bay Rays. Now, look at the Orioles the Orioles are on a 4-game winning streak, and they're on pace to win 100 games. Okay. And they are 5.5 games behind Tampa Bay, who have won 8 of their last 10 games. Yes, there's still a lot of baseball left to be played, but we're in mid-June right now. And you're starting to see, if you are a Marlin fan or if you are a Diamondback fan, or if you're a Pirate fan, this is no longer, hey, we had a nice April. This is, hey, we are probably going to be above 500 when the 4th of July shows up, which is something that all of those fan bases would have signed off on. You and I are going to talk a little bit about some of our All-Star Game picks. I maintain, and I'm going to just make this caveat, I bring this up all the time, and I've never been proven wrong about this. I think the season should begin with the All-Star Game. I think that's a way to start the year with all the stars, and start the year with a big event, big celebration of baseball to kick off the season. The other reason why I think we start the season with the All-Star Game is that you can use the entire season's worth of stats. The way the All-Star Game is set up now, it penalizes players for having a terrific second half. If you have a great first half, you're probably going to get a lot of All-Star Game votes. If you have a good first half, but a dynamite second half, well, that's not going to help you get into an All-Star Game. That's why Kirk Gibson won a National League Most Valuable Player, but I am tied with him in All-Star Game appearances. 0. And you've had instances like there was a year Jake Arrieta down the stretch basically pitched the Cubs into the playoffs and won himself the Cy Young Award. And nobody argued that Cy Young Award. Yet here's the deal. He didn't make the All-Star team that year because he had a good first half, but he had a dynamic second half. So I think if you have the All-Star Game to start the season, you have the whole year's worth of stats to pluck from. And it also gives you arguments and things like that to have over the off season to compare this player to that player.
So we're basing it off the previous season?
Yeah. If you start the year, you're not going to base it on spring training. Okay,
so these guys are coming out the off season. You know, maybe they had surgery, maybe they're not starting the season, but yeah, we're gonna have the All-Star Game. It just feels like it just feels.
We also vote in players with no business being in the All-Star Game as well.
Yeah, but you're gonna be like, remember that guy's season from 4 months ago? He deserves to be an All-Star right now.
Yeah, he does. It's the stars from the previous year coming in to start the season.
Maybe if you want to do it at the end of the season, but it would feel a little weird. The end of the season,
we have the playoffs.
Okay, but we do the Pro Bowl in football a week before the Super Bowl, right?
And a grand total of 0 people care about it.
Okay, I don't know how many people care about the MLB All-Star Game right now.
Because of the way it's set up.
Okay.
You start the year with all the big stars coming together.
I don't know if we would have more interest if we take the whole summer off. Then it's like, hey, let's play the All-Star Game now.
No,
You disagree?
no,
It's okay.
no. There you go. Well, look, it's a fool's errand. Now, I did something. I am not someone who uses WAR as an end all be all, but
Mhm.
I did use it for a tool when I did my All-Star game votes because I went to Fangraphs
Oh
and
yeah.
I put in, instead of like this season, I said the last calendar year. So from this point to today, this point last year to today, so I basically did my best to make my basis on who's on my All-Star team on their previous 162 games.
Interesting. Okay.
Because if you had a good second half last year, that shouldn't penalize you. Yeah, that shouldn't take away, or that should be a reward. Isn't playing well down the stretch something that we want to reward instead of penalize? And so, and I put together my starting 9 plus my starting pitcher. Now, I will also say there's a couple of times that I lean towards star power. Do you know why? It's the
Why?
freaking All-Star game, and people want to see stars in an All-Star game. But anyway, I have my starting 9 plus my starting pitcher for both the NL and the AL, using a combination of their top Fangraph WAR from the past 100 from the past calendar year, plus my desire to see some stars shine on the big stage. So that's what I did. And what do you have for us?
Well, the way I did it, I just kind of, went on good old MLB All-Star voting. I was like, let me just filter it by good old OPS, who's on the good teams, who's got the good stats. I was like, I'm going to pick my players just like that. You could have done a big deep dive on here, but I did try to keep it to just this season, Sully Baseball. I know you're trying to pull in last year and you're trying to look at stats from the World Series a decade ago, but I'm going to just try to keep it from this season.
Not fair.
Of evaluating players.
Not fair. I'm basing it on the quality player from the past calendar year. So anyway, but it would be interesting to see. I bet you and I are going to come up with a lot of the same names.
Yeah, that's probably true.
I bet we're going to come up with a lot of the same names. So let's go through. We're going to want to do, which one do you want to do? National League or American League first?
I'm an NL baseball guy, but I believe in saving the best for last. So let's start with American League, actually.
Okay. Catcher, I have Jonah Heim of Texas.
Okay, I don't mind that. Honestly, when doing this, I don't want to spoil too much, but big Texas ballot come down for me. But for me, it came down when I look at that American League catcher between Adley Rutschman and Salvador Perez. I felt like they had the two best seasons. I'm going with the slight edge of Salvador Perez. If you want to give it to Rutschman because he's on the better team, he's being more of a contributor to winning, sure. But Perez, I just think is a slightly better catcher, old, reliable. I'm going down with Salvador Perez.
I have no issue with any of those. They were definitely in my consideration as well. For my first base, I had to make sure someone from Tampa Bay was on this roster starting. So I have Yandy Diaz at first base.
I also have Yandy Diaz. Looking at first base for the American League, not the strongest field right now. A guy like Vladimir Guerrero Jr. not having a great season. Something like Ryan Notter from the Oakland A's, you can make a case for as being the starter for first base. Kind of a weak field this year in the American League.
Yeah, especially compared to the National League, which is a lot tougher.
Oh, yeah.
The little preview right there. Second base, I have Marcus Semien from the Texas Rangers.
I do as well. It's another one where it's like the field for some of these positions are weaker than some of the other positions. American League second base is another one. You can make Altuve a case, and he's only played like 15 games. Brandon Drury has a case as well for the Angels, which is kind of crazy. Like second base for the American League is another weak one, and Marcus Semien is just by far having the best season, I think, of all second base players in the American League. That Texas Rangers offense is humming, and he's a big reason why.
Shortstop, it was interesting. It's not who I kind of thought I kicked around a bunch of names. But the one I'm going with is Bo Bichette of Toronto.
Bo Bichette is very good. Shortstop in the American League is a tough one. You got Bo Bichette, you got Wander Franco, but like I said, this is a Texas Rangers heavy bout for me. He's played slightly fewer games than some of these other guys, but he's having a fantastic season. Corey Seager, over 1,000 OPS, got insane batting average. I'm going with him, even though he might have maybe he has a slightly smaller sample size than the other guys, but I think he's been so good in the games he's played.
You're going with Seager, right?
Seager.
To me, it was a borderline coin toss between Seager and Bichette.
Yeah, it is.
I think I would have no quarrel with either one of them right now. Third base, it came down. This game, there was a couple of names that came down from me, and I chose Jose Ramirez because he's been super hot down the stretch, and I want to see a big hot bat in there. There was a couple. Bregman was there for me. There's a couple other ones in there for me, but I lean towards Jose Ramirez.
Yeah, third base is a tougher position in the American League. You got Ramirez, you got Paredes of the Rays, Matt Chapman. Devers
and Chapman, as well.
Yeah, Devers probably having a little bit of a down season by his metrics, but he's still incredible RBI producer, power threat. But like I said, I'm keeping it Rangers heavy, and because their offense has been so elite, I'm going with a rookie, Josh Jung, and I got 3 Rangers. Bryce Patrick is going to be very happy with Marcus Semien, Corey Seager, and Josh Jung. I basically got the whole infield on my roster.
To me, it came down to Chapman and Ramirez, and I lean towards Ramirez for personal reasons. It's my vote. So sue me.
Yeah.
I have a star-studded outfield.
Okay.
Let's start with left fielder. I have Yordan Alvarez of Houston. I want to see that bat. I want to see that upper deck power.
Yeah, I hope it would be star-studded. This is the All-Star game. Yordan Alvarez, on the injured list right now, but with the season he's had, I'm putting him in my left field as well. Yordan Alvarez, at this point last year, it was him or Aaron Judge as the MVP of the first half. Of course, Aaron Judge pulled away in the second half. But Yordan Alvarez, you look at his last 160, last 180 games for Alvarez. He's had a fantastic last 15 months of Major League Baseball. So I don't feel bad at all putting him in my left field.
Center field, it's star power. And he may not be having his best season, but I want to see Mike Trout in that lineup.
Oh, okay. You're going with old reliable. You can never be mad at going with Mike Trout because he's a stud. I'm going with another Tampa Bay Ray, Randy Arozarena, who's having a fantastic season. RBIs, home runs, got the OPS, got speed, got defense. A really charismatic and fun player as well. Just one of those exciting players. So I'm putting him on my all-star ballot. We'll probably add a little bit more charisma than a Mike Trout in my all-star outfield.
Also, just so you know, with Alvarez injured, I would have Arozarena take his spot in the lineup. And for right field, I'm going Jackie Bradley Jr. I'm totally joking. I'm going Aaron Judge. Of course, I'm going Aaron Judge.
Yeah, Aaron Judge is the best position player in Major League Baseball. Right?
And you see, and granted, he's injured right now. You see when he remove him from the Yankee lineup, they go from being a fearsome lineup to being a very weak lineup without him. It's not just the fact that he puts up unbelievable numbers, but the ripple effect that he has on the rest of the lineup is staggering.
Yeah, he feels like the most valuable non-Ohtani. I don't know why I can say his name. Non-Ohtani player in Major League Baseball because, like you just said, the gravity pulls maybe since Barry Bonds. I don't know, maybe that's too hyperbolic, but is there another fearsome guy they've had go up to the plate since Barry Bonds in Aaron Judge?
Well, I don't think I can think of it. May be I'm going to be really, really hesitant to compare anyone to Bonds
in terms of just raw power.
But what I will compare him to Bonds is when you remove Bonds from the Giants lineup or the Pirates lineup for that matter, the effect it had on the rest of the players was staggering. And I can't think of another single player who had that kind of an impact that put him in the lineup and they're a pennant contender, take him out of the lineup and they look like a split squad spring training team. And that's amazing for Judge. My DH, I have Ohtani. I have to have Ohtani in this team. I got to have Ohtani on the team. Yeah,
it has to be Ohtani. And we look at true DHs when we do this on the All-Star ballot. Ohtani is a true DH. I don't know if he ever plays the field. So yeah, Ohtani, easy answer. And he's like quite literally, if you just took away his pitching stats and just put up his position player stats, one of the best in Major League Baseball, probably the best Angels position player in that lineup, even ahead of Mike Trout with the season he's had. So Ohtani, easy answer for you, DH.
And my starting pitcher, I guess we're supposed to say Ohtani. And I would have no trouble starting Ohtani. Although I think Nathan Eovaldi would be the one I would pick of the current crop of American League pitchers.
Okay, I don't mind Nathan Eovaldi. Ohtani, just the most fun guy they could throw out there just because he's the guy everyone wants to see. I'm going with a ho-hum answer. Maybe the guy who's having the best season, Shane McClanahan. He leads the American League in ERA, has 9 wins, double-digit strikeouts per 9.
Yeah, he's obviously an all-star, and he was one of the ones I considered. Well, tell you what, when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the National League All-Stars. But first, hey, I'm going on a big trip in a couple of days.
Oh.
And I'm going to be driving my car up from Pasadena up to San Francisco in a few days. So if I had car issues, do you have any recommendations for who I should talk to?
Yeah, you want to make sure all your parts are up to date, because if they're not, you're going to want to check out eBay Motors, because for a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit or your money back, because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Hey, before we continue, I want to bring up the trivia question. We got a bunch of people who got the trivia question correct, but the first person to get it right was Jordan, whose Twitter handle is lazy_S_cowboy. The trivia question was, who is the only Reds manager to win the National League Manager of the Year? And the answer is Jack McKeon with the 1999 Reds. Jack McKeon. It wasn't Lou Piniella who led him to the World Series. It wasn't Davey Johnson who led him to the National League Championship Series. It wasn't Pete Rose who bet on the Reds. And it wasn't Dusty Baker who took him to the postseason. Nope. It was Jack McKeon who brought an unlikely Reds team to a one-game playoff with the Mets in 1999. And so that's the answer to that question. All right. Speaking of the National League, let's go over our National League All-Star picks. Why don't you start off with catcher?
All right. With catcher, I got, at the time in the offseason, I said this trade might be a little bit overrated, but I have to rescind that statement because I think he's been the best catcher in the NL this year. Sean Murphy of the Atlanta Braves has been elite defensively behind the plate. Offensively, he's been a key cog in that lineup. I'm going with him as my catcher.
I think that's the biggest no-brainer, quite frankly, of these picks. If Wilson Contreras was having a better year with the Cubs, with St. Louis, I'm sorry. If he was a player with St. Louis that he was with the Cubs, I would have included him. But based upon last year and this year, it's got to be Sean Murphy. Sean Murphy.
If you're looking at the catchers just based off this season, Will Smith has had a pretty good year. Even the rookie for the Mets, Francisco Alvarez, and also the catcher for the Rockies. He's been him and McMahon have been quietly producing in that lineup.
I just think Murphy's the best at this point.
Yeah.
At this point, he would do it. Okay, now this is probably the most stacked position coming up is first base. I'm curious to see who you had getting the spot there.
Yeah, first base, there's some good contenders, but I do think the answer is kind of obvious because I think Freddie Freeman is levitating amongst the rest of the crew. Pete Alonso, he's, of course, 20-plus home runs, but he just went on the injury list. Goldie's always going to be around. He's old, reliable. There's a ton of first basemen having great seasons, but I think Freddie Freeman's having like an MVP type season, so I have to pick him.
I agree. Freddie Freeman was my pick. Second base, my pick was pretty clear. Who do you have at second base?
Second base is kind of weird this year. You got Nolan Gormans and Thairo Estradas, but I'm going with the man who's batted near 400 the entire season. I want to put a little respect on his name, Arias of the Miami Marlins.
Luis Arias, it's funny because he's a second baseman, kind of like it's like this is a fantasy team, because he doesn't really have the one position that he's nailed down to. If you took this year and last year's WAR, for the last calendar year, it probably would have been Jeff McNeil of the Mets. But if you're batting nearly 400, and his addition to that lineup has turned them from being an okay team with good pitching to a legitimate wild card contender. And, right now they would be a wild card team. And I think no small part of that is, it's not the exact same effect that Judge has, but by putting that solid professional hitter in that lineup, it's caused a chain reaction where, the Solairs and everyone else in that lineup are hitting the ball well, and they're scoring enough for we knew the Marlins were going to pitch well.
Mhm.
So now they can hit, and he is having arguably an MVP season.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got to be my pick for the MVP at this point is a little bit later in my NL picks, but Arise would be second for me right now. Freeman, Arise, and the other person would probably be my top three at this moment. You may be able to guess who the third person is and who my leader is. But anyway, I'll tell you the single weakest position of any of the AL or NL All-Star starters is National League shortstop.
Yeah, it's kind of gross. I wasn't even entirely sure who to pick here. I kind of felt bad picking for anyone, but I'm going to lean into the homerism a little bit, and I feel like it's justified with the season he's had compared to the other guys on this list. I'm going with Geraldo Perdomo, who's been a key contributor to this D-backs team, who's been elite with runners in scoring position. There may not be a D-back I trust more at the plate if there's 2 outs and 2 runners on than Geraldo Perdomo. He's got as many RBIs. I think he's got more RBIs than every shortstop on this list outside of Francisco Lindor. He's been a key contributor over 800 OPS. I'm going with Perdomo as my starting shortstop, and I never thought I would have said that in a million years.
I considered him. Yeah. I absolutely considered him. Now, let me put it this way. If Francisco Lindor was having an okay first half, he would get it for me.
Yeah.
But he's not having an okay first half. He's having a subpar first half. And so the only reason I'm putting Dansby Swanson as the starter is based upon he's been mediocre this first half, and he was very good at the second half last year. I mean, this is where combining the two put him slightly over the top. And I also believe that Swanson will, when the dust settles at the end of the year, I think he'll probably put up decent stats and be, not look insane that I picked him. But again, there was no player on any of the teams that stood out as, I couldn't do O'Neal Cruz yet. He's not there yet. No. There was a couple I thought, I kind of squinted my eyes and no, I just can't do it. So because I can't have a hole at shortstop, otherwise there'd be lots of ground balls right through to the outfield, I decided to go Swanson. Yeah,
you could have went with like a big name like Bogarts or Trey Turner, but none of them have been.
They don't deserve it. They don't deserve it. They don't deserve it. Trey Turner was terrible for a while, and Bogarts has been subpar and injured. Trust me, I love both of those players. And I'm like, I couldn't pull the trigger. So I just pulled the trigger on Swanson.
Been weak.
Okay. Third base. Who you got?
Third base. That was another weird one for this season. I'm going with Nolan Arenado, but I don't think he's had like a Nolan Arenado type season. I just think the field is kind of weird. Like you could go with JD Davis here of the Giants. You could even go with like a Ryan McMahon, like I said, the Colorado Rockies. But I'm going with Nolan Arenado just because he's old, reliable. I know he's going to play great defense for me, and he's a true star. So I'm putting him over at the hot corner.
And I'm putting Arenado in there because he was my pick for the MVP last year.
Okay.
And there is no surefire other pick there.
No.
So this is a combination of the second half of last year where I thought he was elite. In fact, I would have picked Arenado over it was, if Machado was having a slightly better first half, I would have gone Machado for the same reason, because Machado was in my top 3 of MVP candidates last year. So again, this is a little bit of waiting the second half they had last year. Again, I don't think anyone would throw a pie in my face when I put Nolan Arenado on my all-star ballot. I'm one of the few Manny Machado fans in the world. But so I wanted to vote for him. I just couldn't, because he hasn't been on the field enough.
He's been bad too. He just hasn't
Yeah.
performed at all this year.
Although he made that amazing catch the other day. Who knows? He may have a phenomenal second half, but Arenado's my pick. All right, I need to know your left fielder.
Oh, you already know my left fielder, because if I didn't pick this guy, I would have had another D-back on the list. And left field is going to Corbin Carroll. If it wasn't Corbin Carroll, it should have been Lourdes Gurriel. But Corbin Carroll, if you filter by any offensive metric, he's going to be near at the top of those lists. We had a conversation a couple of weeks ago. Could he be the third player to win Rookie of the Year and MVP in the same season? You gave me a quick, fast no. He was plus 20,000 at that time on FanDuel. I think he's like plus 9,000 and climbing. The conversation getting real. He's almost caught Acuna in all of his stats when Acuna has been the favorite for the MVP all season. I'm locking in Corbin Carroll as my left fielder for the All-Star game, and watch out, still get the money in while it's early on him to potentially win MVP.
You're going to be mad at me.
Oh, man.
My left field pick right there. Man. Who do you think?
It better be Corbin Carroll.
Of course it's Corbin Carroll.
Okay, there we go. I was like,
of course it's Corbin Carroll. Yes. Okay. All right. Yeah, that was no doubt about it. Yeah, I saw you starting to sweat there. Yeah. Yes, absolutely, it's Corbin Carroll. Center field, I have Acuna.
Yeah, me too.
And Acuna is currently my NL MVP. Mm-hmm. Now, again, Carroll, Freeman, Arise, all are in the mix right now. But if the leader in the clubhouse for me is Acuna, and I think that he's a remarkable, on all facets of the game, he's a remarkable player. I think he's having a fine season, and he definitely belongs in the All-Star game.
Yeah, I agree on everything you said. Hopefully Acuna can stay healthy the entire season, because that's been like the biggest issue from the last few years.
And the game is more fun with Acuna healthy playing.
Yeah, he's electric.
Right field, I have Mookie Betts. Now, I just, as someone who grew up a diehard Red Sox fan, I am just so glad the Red Sox were able to save money on on their taxes, because I'd hate to see a billionaire pay money. It's worth a generational talent being traded away. Mookie Betts, and you know what? He could have been the starting shortstop, because he started a couple of days at shortstop. But why not throw Mookie Betts in there? But he's in there for me.
And honestly, if Major League Baseball was like, let's put Mookie Betts, give him some infield eligibility on this ballot to strengthen that position, I wouldn't be mad at them at all. Don't do that. And then you have a guy like Lourdes Gurriel in that other outfield spot, and then you got all the best players in the National League in the game. I think it's going to be even more sad for Red Sox fans when you look at who could be the DH potentially, because I got JD Martinez as my starting DH in the National League.
Yeah, well, Arizona Diamondback fans won't be happy that I have Paul Goldschmidt as my DH. But, but again, JD is also a former Diamondback. Yeah. I'm fine with JD. I'm fine with Goldschmidt. I want to see Goldschmidt in that lineup, but JD has been unbelievable with Los Angeles this year.
Yeah, I just went with a true DH, because I don't even know if you could pick a guy like Goldschmidt on just like the ballot that MLB has set up.
Well, okay, if that's the case, then it would be JD. Yeah. Okay, who do you have starting? What pitcher do you have
starting? I mean, if he didn't give up 5 earned runs against the Detroit Tigers on Sunday, I really would have went with Zach Gallen here, but now his ERA is like above a 3. So I think I'm going to have to go with not a guy who I would have expected entering the year, but I'm going with Marcus Stroman, who's having like a bit of a renaissance season for the Chicago Cubs after struggling the last couple of years. Absolutely,
it's Stroman. I mean, Stroman right now has got to be the front runner for the NL Cy Young Award.
Which is gross.
I mean, I'm not saying.
You're right.
I'm just saying. Well, there you go. We use different criteria to pick our ballots, and yet with only 1 or 2 exceptions here or there, and they're usually at the positions where there's a coin toss. Mm-hmm. I mean, we had the same catches, same first base, same second base, different shortstop, different third, same outfield, same starting pitcher, and I think we had the same outfield, almost the same outfield. We only like 3 or 4 differences in the entire thing.
Yeah, I felt like a lot of the dudes it just felt like you knew who the starters were in the outfield, or not in the outfield, in the All-Star ballot. It just felt like at a lot of the positions, it was just a clear-cut guy who should be taking over this year.
Millard Thomas, congratulations for having the best team in the National League. Here's a trivia question, though. Question for today is about one of the most fascinating figures in baseball history, I think, is Rickey Henderson. Rickey Henderson, who has not only the only person with over 1,000 stolen bases, he has 1,406 stolen bases. If someone, I think I calculated someone stole 55 bases a year for, I think it was for like 22 years, and 55 bases every year, Ricky Henderson would still be the all-time stolen base king. I mean, he's just, no one else has 1,000, and he has 1,400. Between his first full season in the major leagues, 1980, and the 1991 season, between 1980 and 1991, Ricky Henderson led the American League in stolen bases every single year except one. Who is the trivia question is this. First person to answer this, send it to Sully Baseball on Twitter or Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter, or leave it here in the comments. Who is the only player between 1980 and 1991 to lead the American League in stolen bases whose name was not Ricky Henderson? So fire that along here. Fire that as your trivia question. I know a bunch of you probably know it, so this is going to be the first one to jump on it. So Millard Thomas, tell people where they can follow you.
You can follow me on Twitter at CreatorThomas24 for my personal account. Look up Locked On Diamondbacks on both Twitter, Instagram for the podcast handle, and please hit subscribe on the Locked On Diamondbacks YouTube channel.
And you can follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and Instagram. And I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Doing a podcast with the man whose team has the best record in the National League. That's Millard Thomas. My name is Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. This has been another Locked On Diamondbacks, Locked On MLB crossover. Let's fist bump and call it a week.
Boom.